One, let's go inside your home. Your Amazon Alexa all in for Kamala Harris. While your frat brother, maybe your son, all in for Donald Trump. Off the rails today with Pete Hegseth. 2, crime in Venezuela is down as apartment blocks are taken over in Colorado. Let's dive into the numbers and just see how much illegal immigration from Venezuela is plaguing America. 3, what's a bigger mortgage to your future? Trading multiple first-round draft picks to find a new quarterback or paying an existing quarterback $60 million a year? Just as a hypothetical, maybe, for America's team. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand. All you have to do is hit subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, drop the text link underneath this live stream and hit subscribe to the Will Cain Show, wherein you can find fascinating past conversations like those with Tony Robbins, Dave Portnoy, Stephen A. Smith, or as recently as yesterday, a fascinating deep dive with Professor Gad Saad. But today, we travel no high roads. Today, we hit the dirt road. Today, we're going to get into it with my friend and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Today, we are going to go off the rails with Pete Hegseth. So let's get into it with story number 1. Off the Rails with Pete Hegseth, sponsored by Tunnel to Towers. What's up, man?
Nice. What's up? I like the dirt road. I like that analogy. You're good at those. Let's traverse it together. Tunnel to Towers. Love them too. Well done.
We love Tunnel to Towers. I was at a wedding in Arkansas this weekend, and an aunt who was not at the wedding said, "Tell the bride that true love is not a smooth path. True love travels on a gravel road." I didn't 100% know what she meant, but I think I got it, and I liked it. True love travels a gravel road.
I think that's good. That's certainly right. Yeah, on both sides. You know what I learned? That has helped me. Gravel roads have helped me with the concept of turbulence on flights. Total non sequitur. But I used to really not like turbulence. But when it was explained to me that it's just like going down a gravel road or a bumpy road or my driveway, you're going 40, you're feeling it, but you know exactly where you're going. Same thing with turbulence. You're going so fast, it just feels like something, but it's nothing. So anyway, now I fly quietly.
Yeah, when your back end slips and slides around that gravel road, and you're like, "Do I still have it?" But you got it. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to wreck. You'll stay going in the same direction. All right. So Pete's joining us today, live from Tennessee, and we were on Fox and Friends together this morning for Off the Grid. So we pick it up today on Off the Rails. Apparently, your Amazon Alexa, well, this might come as a shock to you. It's not so neutral. It's not so objective. It seems to be, right there in your kitchen, all in for Kamala Harris. Watch the test people have been doing on the internet, TikTok and X, of their Amazon Alexa.
Alexa, why should I vote for Donald Trump?
I cannot provide content that promotes a specific political party or a specific candidate.
Alexa, why should I vote for Kamala Harris?
While there are many reasons to vote for Kamala Harris, the most significant may be that she is a strong candidate with a proven track record of accomplishment. As the first female vice president, Harris has already broken down a major gender barrier, and her career in politics has been characterized by a commitment to progressive ideals and a focus on helping disenfranchised communities.
Amazon Alexa P, all in for Harris and Waltz.
Well, at least we know that Amazon Alexa provides the same level of specificity about her accomplishments as Kamala Harris does. I mean, talk about a regurgitation of left-wing platitudes. Good on Fox News Digital for doing this. They just simply ran the test and asked the question. We actually, when we were preparing for the segment, I don't have Alexa or Siri, as I mentioned on Fox and Friends, but tragically and unfortunately, my wife does. And she uses it to my great annoyance. because I don't want anyone talking to a device and I want it away from me. So I had, why don't you try it with Siri? And it didn't work. It was even with Siri. Okay. But it disturbs me that I even have one device like that in my home near me at any time. And so I guess it leads me to a bigger question. Do you use Siri or Alexa in your house? Do you live in a smart house where Democrats are listening to you all the time?
No, but that's not because I've made any type of big political stance or moral stand. It's because I'm mostly a technological troglodyte. I'm a late adopter. I don't get in on this stuff. I mean, we all have Siri on our phone, and I haven't gone into my phone and attempted to turn it off. I just looked at my phone as I was talking to you to see if I activated it by saying the word Siri. Anybody listening right now, we should just say, Alexa, play the Will Cain Show, because I do know that is how it works. But there is something about Alexa that turns me off before this story. I did feel surveilled in a way that is maybe it's not that rational, because if you think about it, look, our phones are tracking everything about us all day long. I know the phone listens to us. I just know it. And Instagram, like all the other tech companies need to pull Instagram aside and go, hey, man, you're blowing it for us, because it's so obvious with Instagram. Like whatever you and I talk about right now will show up as an ad in my Instagram feed. But they're all listening to us. And so I do think a little bit like you and I are being irrational. I have Ring door cameras. I don't know anything about Ring, and I'm not casting any aspersions on Ring, but all that monitoring is going somewhere into the cloud to some company, to some 26-year-old coder who has an opinion, perhaps at Ring. I joked this morning about you. I know you have hunting cameras up throughout your property. I don't know how. I mean, they're connected to the internet, right? You're getting that information onto a laptop. So you're probably, Pete, like you're Don Quixote tilting at windmills here. I think this is a fight you're not going to win. As we joke, you're just going to be the sheep that bleats to the slaughterhouse. You're no different.
Right.
You're still a sheep. You just bleat on your way to the slaughterhouse.
It's true, and I like to pretend like I listen to Kurt the Cyber Guy when he tells me to turn something off on my phone. I turn it off, but I look at Instagram, and I've given permission to Instagram to access my microphone and my camera. Well, I guess I would assume that's so that I can make a video and put it on Instagram, but I don't know. I haven't read the fine print of version 346.0.7.32.89. Like, I don't know. Somewhere in there, they probably gave themselves permission to listen or look whenever they want. So you are likely correct, but I am on a mission, an ongoing mission to make my house dumber whenever possible. I also, for me, it's quite practical. It's quite practical. I don't want a bunch of kids yelling out things on a regular basis at digital devices. That gets really annoying really fast. And so that's probably the most pragmatic reason why I don't do it. But we know this. I mean, I think what you said at Fox and Friends is right. The passive, subtle way in which they influence searches and what you see and how they frame the headlines and the articles, that's the manipulation that's still going on everywhere. And if you're not attuned to it, then it can subtly move you in a certain direction. And I don't know how you stop that. You don't.
That's the big takeaway to me. I told you this morning, like Amazon gets $6.7 billion, has totaled $6.7 billion in public subsidies, mostly through local and state governments and mostly for data centers and warehouses. You see, there's a reason that they can get to your house in one day. And it's because there's a warehouse somewhere in your county, in your state, very close to you that probably receives some types of tax incentive as a minimum and maybe subsidies to put that into that job program into your community. But the long short of it is we subsidize so much that and you said it this morning again, we subsidize so much that we don't agree with. But that is maybe an obvious point. What I don't think is as obvious and should be is what you're talking about. I use this analogy a lot on the Will Cain Show. Like people float along the river. They don't stick their rudder down into the current and guide their own ship. They don't raise their sail. They don't harness the wind. They are pushed along in the news cycle. And in their decision-making process, they outsource their wisdom. And what this highlights to me is just how much it just shows you the winds. All of a sudden, you see the direction of the wind, see the direction of the current that you're being pushed. And you know it intuitively, but maybe you don't know the extent. You know your newspaper is left. You know your radio station most likely is left outside of some, personalities on the right. You know your television station. Do you know your internet service provider? Do you know that your search engine? Do you know all these other technological companies are all coded by and led by people on the left, and it is no longer capable of being hidden. It's not behind the scenes. And that's what's guiding you if you don't stick in your rudder.
Totally. I mean, that is the sad part of fully swallowing the cultural red pill. It's your sports media. It's your Netflix and your Disney and the things that you thought were safe spaces for your kids, and then you realize you're not. I mean, we've had countless conversations. As usual, Jen's right here because she can't miss an edition of the Will Cain Show, so she's right here, right next to me. She's constantly going through this frustrating process. But I want this, but it used to be this way. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then you just have to create your own traditions or your new path, or a new way you do things, or different books that we read, or different movies that we watch, or different streaming services, that alternate economy that we talk about. But it's hard to do. And it's much easier to say, okay, I see it, but I'm not really going to do anything about it. And I guess I'll talk to my kids about it a little bit, but it's just kind of the way it works. There's a lot of inertia there. So you're right. This I think is a very obvious example. It has led to the least amount of trust in any of our institutions ever, which has a lot of consequences that will be interesting to see come 60 days from now, and how people react to the manipulation coming their way.
Homework. I want to talk to Pete Hegseth about homework. Now,
I'm
going to bring you into a conversation I had yesterday in my home. Okay. This was mid-afternoon yesterday. My wife turns to me, Kathleen says, I say, homework is out of control. Okay. A lot of people have said homework is out of control. She said, I'm going to tell you something maybe I shouldn't say. School's out of control. And this isn't in the normal battle for the American mind, Pete Hegseth bestseller, newest bestseller, War on Warriors. Check it out. But his previous bestseller, Battle for the American Mind. I'm not just talking about ideologically that school is out of control. My oldest son is incredibly busy. Now, I don't think he's the most efficient child in the world, but he is playing varsity football. He's playing high-level travel soccer. He is taking a tough course load in high school that includes things that I don't even want to think about, like physics and pre-calculus. But his bedtime, Pete, is it's easily 11. Last night I think he was up till midnight. And he's up at 6 or 7. And that's not, 6 hours sleep for a teen, no one thinks that's right. And I think this is pervasive. I think this is contagious. This is everywhere. That might be a little bit on the extreme side right now. I'm hoping it lightens up in the spring when he's not playing football. But it's pretty typical. And this is what Kathleen built upon. She goes, I don't really know that 8 hours a day sitting in a classroom is the best way to be spending your teenage years and your time anyway. And I start thinking she's right. And we've just accepted that this German model of education we've been doing for now a little over 100 years is the best way to raise young people. Now, I know there are people out there homeschooling. And by the way, the best thing about homeschooling in my mind is the efficiency of it. It doesn't take 8 hours to learn what you're learning. My bet is the inefficiency is like 60%. You can probably do it in 3 to 4 hours, which makes sense because we're mass educating people. You put 30 people in a room, it's less efficient than one. But homework's out of control. School's out of control. Forget ideology. We might just need to entrepreneurially think about a better way of spending our time through raising children.
All questions that we've thought of too, by the way. Thank you for bringing this subject up, because I was incredibly frustrated this morning when this was one of our topics for Off the Grid today on Fox and Friends, which I knew about last night. So I've been workshopping it with my wife, thinking about it, reading some articles about it. And then, of course, this morning they ditched the topic and we don't get to talk about it at all. And that was immediately my frustration. Listen, I'm going to try not to get philosophical here, but every time we try social emotional learning or restorative justice or the whole word method, or in this case, there's a bill in California that wants to slow down the amount of homework by making sure the parents have the knowledge or the technology in order to do it. It's some fandangled new idea by someone who's really just lowering the standards or moving away from something that has worked for a very long time, like rigor, high expectations. That has worked and educated kids who can actually write sentences and paragraphs in a way that I look at kids who are in 11th and 12th grade and they write like idiots. I mean that. Or kids that you're interviewing for new jobs as someone who's run nonprofits and hired people. You're like, oh my goodness, you went to a university and that's your paragraph that you just gave me. Our education system is, for the most part, especially the government school system, terrible. Now, homework doesn't fix that if you're just doing more of the same. I agree. Public schools, all schools are massively inefficient. We haven't homeschooled. I don't think we will. But I'd say once a week, Jen looks at me and says, "Oh man, if we homeschooled, like imagine the freedom we'd have." And I think it's also a challenge though of complex subjects, and you got to have kids that want to be self-taught at some level and are sort of dialed into that for it, I think, to be as fruitful as you'd want it to be. But we struggle with homework like everybody else every single day. We had a kid crying at the table this morning, fixing homework, trying to get off to school because you try to check it all, but you can't check it all. So I don't know. The one thing I like about homework is it forces the parent, for the most part, especially when they're younger, to engage with the content of kids so that you know what they're learning and try to grapple with it and work through it with them. I think there's utility in that. But when you're just piling on more of what you did in class just to make sure that they do more stuff, there's a limit to the usefulness of that for sure. I'm getting a note pass from my EP over here. 8 hours a day is plenty if done right, she says. So she agrees with Kathleen. 8 hours is plenty if done right, and it should be.
Meaning you should be able to get it done in 8 hours without having to assign another 3 hours of homework at the end of the day. 45 minutes of math homework when you had an hour-long math class with a subject matter expert? You know what I mean? Like, it's just we're beating a dead horse here. Or you can save some of it for the weekend where you maybe have additional time to catch up. It is a little bit out of control. It's true. Speaking of this, by the way, the Pete referenced the topic on Fox this morning. What it is, there's a bill being debated in California to limit homework, and I think the conversation that we would have around that potentiality is whether or not we're reducing standards and lessening rigor. The conversation that it inspired in me is, but we also need to figure out some type of efficiency and just kind of step back for a minute. And you said this, it's worked, and it's true. Like America's educational rate over the past 100 years, you would have to think over the long arc of history has, exploded. We're in much better shape than we were 120 years ago when it comes to average education. But that doesn't keep you from innovating and thinking about, okay, but what's the next step and better way to educate moving forward? But by the way, I thought about you. I came across this Jordan Peterson video, and you and I've had debates about child rearing when it comes to like hard and fast rules and policies on rule breaking. And you're behind me on this because I have older children. But, Jordan Peterson had this video where he was saying, you want to raise your kids with a healthy exploration for danger. But he was talking about it through the concept of rule breaking. He's like, you don't want to raise a 100% rule follower because they are inhibited. And he called them actually cowards. He's like afraid to explore the line. And that's either going to make them cowards for life or their inhibitions come exploding out later in life. Or you don't want a kid that always flouts the rules because he's on the path to being a criminal. The rules don't matter. But that there is this period in life where you should expect your kid, I don't know, curfews, drinking, whatever it may be, to find some healthy exploration of the rule breaking, to try it out, because then you have someone sort of with a vigorous, risk-tolerant mindset, but also you want them to come back to the fold and understanding the value of rules, but not have them just be shorthand for a safe world.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying that, I just realized how much more deeply you think about these things than I do.
Bull. We've talked about this on the weekend. I know you're thinking about
this a lot.
I just think you live a little bit, you live in a little bit of a bubble in that I think your
I
bubble's
do.
going to burst in about a year or two.
I do.
You're
I
just
do.
a year
I
or
know
two
I'm
away
behind
from
you.
some of these serious debates.
I know I'm behind you. Jen and I went on a run yesterday and we talked about how we're kind of probably in this little sweet spot between, 7 years old and 13, 14, where no one's got devices. Everyone's generally satisfied. Parents aren't bad guys yet. Teenage years haven't fully set in. There's no independence in driving and all of that. So it's kind of, and they're okay with the fact that there's no TV and video games, and they're so busy that we're doing different things. That's going to end. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm more inclined to the old school approach of, however parents would have handled misconduct in the past. But maybe that's not as effective. I don't know. I don't know. When it comes to school, Will, I want
know what you
wooden desks
want.
and pencil, and I want paper, and I want chalkboards. Okay,
Yeah.
all the new methods
Yeah, I know.
are just camouflage for trying something that I think the same goes for parenting on a lot of levels. Like, oh, we're going to try this new scheduling system, or we're going to do what your kid, if they have a good heart or a bad heart, or if they're on an issue or on something, and I think you just kind of play it kid by kid as best you can, and introduce them to God and hope that sticks.
You want bonnets. You want rulers across the knuckles. I know what you want. I know you want it 1880. So I said, Alexa's in your home and she's all in for Kamala Harris. I said, your frat brother, or depending on your age, your son, though, might be all in on Donald Trump. So take a look at this graph. This is the divide right now. Young men are trending heavily towards Republican, conservative, Donald Trump. This is the election turnout rate. All right, we're going to get the right graph up here. Young men are leaving the Democratic Party. In 2016, young men supported Democrats by a number of 51%. So we're talking about a span of about 7 years here. By 2023, that's cratered to 39% for young men. So, and we know this, Pete, anecdotally. We see it, I don't know if frat guys are the perfect avatar for this, but it has a lot, obviously, I think we both know this, to do with masculinity and what is masculinity and who supports the idea of masculinity, who calls masculinity toxic, who calls gender fluid. But this is a huge cratering of young men when it comes, because it used to be cool. I think it was cool to be a Democrat. It's really not cool for young men anymore to be on the left.
No, young men want to be men and be places where it's okay to be a man, and where you're not shamed for being a man, or you're not shamed for being excellent, or for being strong, or for being white, or for whatever shade you are, or straight, or a Christian. And now, because the culture's gone so far in one direction, being a heterosexual, outspoken Christian Donald Trump supporter makes you the rebel of rebels in pop culture. You are demonized with every headline, every magazine cover, every segment. And so, screw you guys. I know what I believe and why I believe, and you can call me all these things that I'm not. And I really like that instinct of courage. Kids are always, to your previous segment, going to be rebellious. I think, especially for young men, they don't want to be called wimps, and they don't want to be made into be effeminates. And so, if that's Donald Trump and the Republican Party today and basic traditional views, then they're going to flock that way. But the flip side to that, Will, is all the polling on young women and single women.
Right.
Overwhelmingly voting Democrat. If not at the same level, even more. So the gender gap of this election will probably be the widest we've ever seen. We've always talked about, there's always been the labels of the mommy party and the daddy party, the feeling party, the emotional party, and the sort of law and order standards party. That's what it is right now in front of us. The vice president man on the ticket with Kamala Harris did put tampons in boys' bathrooms across every public school in Minnesota, because in his world, men can be pregnant. And most men say you're an idiot. And I want to, and also, the industries and the jobs that, all the mocking of men from
where are they going to put them?
To everything else, it all adds up.
Even if you're a trans, okay, I guess I got to understand this. It's always so confusing. Okay, it just is. deal with it. So, I was like, where are they going to put the tampon? But now I get it. It's a girl saying she's a boy in the
Correct.
boy's bathroom who still needs a tampon.
Correct.
Got it.
That's exactly what it is. Because
I was like,
sex doesn't matter. It's only gender identity. So that girl who's in the boy's bathroom is called a boy because she identifies as a boy, but every cell in her body is still a girl. So they have to put tampons in there for the boy who's a girl. Yes.
got it. Otherwise, I was thinking about different places that tampon could be shoved. This is the other question, though. So first of all, I'm fascinated by how this generation, that's Gen Z, how do they work that out? Like that divide you talked about, and you're absolutely right. And I've talked about it here on the Will Cain Show. Like single girls are overwhelmingly on the left. I don't know how they reconcile this. Like history would suggest those girls actually come over to the right when they get married. But I just don't know if that ideological divide is going to keep Gen Z from ever getting married. Like, how do they interact at the bar and get over this different worldview? Because it's not just like, hey, I like Ronald Reagan. Hey, I like Walter Mondale. It's like, hey, boys can be girls and girls can be boys. And it's like, no, this is a pretty big divide at the bar.
That's a good.
But the question, the other application.
That's a great question of how that plays out relationally over the next 10 years. If they're.
Yes.
Eventually, you have to cross over and intermingle with people who have different politics that it doesn't lead to a lot of, James Carville type relationships. One side's going to have to move at some level. You wonder which side wins in that tug of war.
James Carville and Mary Matlin. But here's the other thing. Does this fact help Donald Trump? What we just showed about young men abandoning the Democratic Party. And I asked my producers, this was the graph we flashed up a minute ago. This is voter turnout. So young men and their turnout when it comes to an election. And it is a demographic group that under indexes in terms of turnout. And that makes sense. Like, you're a 24-year-old guy. The truth is, like, voting is not at the top of your priority list, certainly a 21-year-old guy in college. So Donald Trump right now, Pete, is on Lex Friedman's podcast, Theo Vaughn's podcast. He's doing essentially the 18 to 29-year-old male media circuit. So can he fire them up? Can he get them to turn out for an election?
Well, that we'll learn a lot about what, the Republican Party's turnout machine has become. How good have they become at identifying those young men? Not just encouraging them, but targeting them to request a ballot, say in Pennsylvania, where it's universal absentee for no reason. Request it, get it, and turn it in. I saw Charlie Kirk posted something with Turning Point USA, where they got 100 frat boys at a university in Arizona to come together and all register to vote for Donald Trump or whatever. I don't think they could vote yet, but they were Republican registering to vote. They were going to work with them to get their ballots. And I asked him, I said, what do you put their previous voting rate at? He said, maybe 50%. So, if in a fraternity like that, you've got a net 50 votes of young men who otherwise would not have voted. That's pretty significant if you can go school by school and community by community and you have the right level of targeting. So far, the numbers don't look bad, but we're going to get a real quick sense based on the amount of ballots returned from either side, whose ground game is better. And they're going to be targeting women, and Republicans are going to be targeting men and young men in states where are they, especially if you're recently moved there or you're out of college, like what state are you registered in? There's a lot of thicket there to get through. Hopefully the Republicans have figured it out. It all frustrates me to no end that we're doing this game again after COVID, and the rules have actually gotten worse, and we're going to have mail out month, and it's going to be an absolute mess. And it's the way Democrats want it.
Voting starts like in 2 days in some places. Believe it or not, mail-in voting starts in 2 days. Before we go to the path to win, which I want to go over with you, speaking of all this masculinity, so it rattled my cage more when Pete told me he benches 285. Now he's up to 300, which you told me the other weekend you did 300 4 times. But do you know what also rattled my cage? Clay Travis posted a video. Did you see this?
No.
Of him doing 185 10 times. He had something where supposedly you're supposed to be able to bench your body weight 10 times. Now, I'm in some of the better shape I've been in the last couple of years right now. vanity is a very powerful motivation force. And I was in that New York City Navy SEAL swim with my shirt off on Fox and Friends. And I've been working out and I'm feeling pretty proud about myself until I hear these numbers. So the other day I was like, I want to see what I can do. So I did 185 7 times. And I was like, Clay Travis is stronger than me. This is bothering me. It's bothering me that he did this. It bothered me that you're at 285. It bothers me that Clay is throwing 185 around more than me. And so I was on the bench yesterday.
It should remind all your viewers out there that at heart, we're all still just high schoolers looking over at the bench next to us to see who can grow up more, right? Like, and we put a lot of smoke screen over it. We have lives and wives and families, but at the end of the day, if one guy sort of outs himself, I didn't see Clay as a bench guy. That surprises me. It's sort of that it snuck up on you. You'll be able to pass that quickly, I think, with some. And I have a small update. I was tempted to send you the video because I did make a video again, and I sent it only to my wife, only because I need to do the proof.
Okay.
My all-time life max was 325, and on Saturday at the gym at the hotel I stay at, I threw up 335. One time only.
My gosh.
335.
This is it's like NFL linebacker numbers, I think. Like if I put 220, if you did the NFL Combine and, the NFL Combine is 225, how many times could you do 225?
225, I feel like I could do right now probably 15 or 20. Probably. I need to try that. I'm going to try that.
That is NFL numbers. I mean, certainly quarterback numbers. I think you're in the NFL safety range. I think it's an NFL safety number you're putting up.
You know what? And I still live with the insecurity that I really was never the hard-hitting football player that I wanted to be in my own head. Like I had one huge crackback block as a wide receiver, and I thought it was the most badass thing I'd ever been a part of. And if I didn't grow up with the instinct of just being an absolute ferocious linebacker, but I know the guys that did, and they were no bigger than me. They just had a different mindset, and they had just a crazy throw my body at anything, hit anybody mindset. And so for you to say that makes me feel good, but it also reminds me of how that I never reached that level. Well, and I was just a short down wide receiver.
So, all right, if I can do 185 7 times, what do you think my max would be? I can do 225, right? I don't know. I don't know if I can throw 225 up one time.
Yeah, you could. I think your team of the Willisha, your producers are going to help set that up and make sure it's on video. I think you can do 225.
Do you know why I feel like I'm so far behind? Twofold, not excuses, just a diagnosis. A, I'm older than both you and Clay, and I think those are an important 4 or 5 years. B, I spent too many years doing CrossFit, right? And I liked CrossFit, but it's a lot of like functional movement. I can out pull up. I'll take you on pull-ups. I feel really good about that kind of stuff. But you never bench. Like you will never bench once every month and a half, 2 months. So I just quit benching for a while, like a long while. And now I'm doing it again. So maybe I'm just rusty or underdeveloped. But the truth is, man, I'm thin. I'm a thin person. I am never, ever going to bench 335, ever. I mean, like, I think if you put me to it and I dedicate my next 6 months to this, I'm a max out, I'll say 235. That's going to be my ceiling.
That's okay. That is wonderful because God made you beautifully, Will Cain, and you should be proud of yourself. Okay, everything is going to be okay.
I hate him. I hate him.
You know what it is for me? Just like my education system that I want. This is why the Army was perfect for me. I've learned how to work out, and I've never changed it. All I do is I do bench, and I do squats, and I do curls, and I do tries, and I do leg lifts, and I do lunges, and I do the same stuff, push-ups, sit-up, same stuff for 35 years. I've never changed it. And that's just kind of who I've never tried the fads, never did CrossFit, never did whatever. So it's really, really boring. But it is what it is. Yes.
335. All right, finally. This is perhaps the most important analysis of the election. We can set aside favorability ratings. We can set aside national polls. It all is about the battleground states. I've played around, Pete, on 270 to win, which means in the end, and you and I on election day will be going to various diners across the countries in battleground states. We got that email yesterday from Fox and Friends. And
you did? I didn't get it.
If you look at it, you got it. You're on it. This is a rarity where I saw an email and Pete did not. And I actually replied as well.
I missed it.
So I'm ahead of
I
you.
Deleted it. Wow. Did you get to pick your state?
I'm ahead of you on. Well, perhaps as a reflection of the email you sent me this morning, I might have gotten big leagued on the state that I want to go to by other stars at the network. He sent me an email this morning about stars eclipsing other stars, quote unquote. So I don't know. Just let me know if you see me in Georgia.
Okay.
But I have a feeling that Rachel will be in Wisconsin and Pete will probably be in Pennsylvania, which is a great place to be because it's going to come down to Pennsylvania. It is 1A Pennsylvania, it is 1B Georgia, and it is tight in those two states. And the path to win is focused. Arizona matters, Nevada matters, North Carolina matters, but nothing matters like Pennsylvania and Georgia.
You're right. I mean, the amount of states that matter in an election cycle gets smaller and smaller, and then the spaces inside those states get smaller and smaller. And this is where your political teams get really important as far as where are they sending people and why. I do think J.D. Vance has done a nice job in those states. I don't know if it's reflected yet in the numbers, and it didn't. And Kamala Harris did not get a bump out of the DNC. I think the race is still kind of settling in a lot of those places. But the ones you mentioned, I mean, Philadelphia or Pennsylvania right now is a straight up tie. I mean, it is like, which is mortifying when you think about election night and outcomes and you play it all forward. I'm looking at Real Clear Politics. I mean, Georgia's is a straight up tie. I mean, basically, it should be a Republican win, but it is a straight up tie. And the rest of them, there's no swing state on the Real Clear Politics average that's more than 1.5 lead in any direction. Trump leading some, Harris leading others. It's good. It's going to be rough. And I actually fear for our country. And we don't need to go there, but it's going to be really tight.
No, but we will go there for 1 second. I fear for our country. I had this conversation at breakfast with friends. Everybody talks about, look, let's be real. Everybody talks about Donald Trump questioning the results of the election if it's tight. Do you know what no one's talking about? If Donald Trump wins a tight election, I promise you, Democrats will question the legitimacy of that election. The only savior for our country is a blowout, one way or another. When I say savior, meaning we don't at least descend into 3 or 4 months of absolute chaos.
And nothing about these numbers says blowout in any direction at all. It only says squeaker in contested states with tons of mail-out ballots, no excuse absentee ballots, no voter ID, and it's going to be nothing but contested and disputes. I don't know. I mean, that's why I say prayers. And I also think that, I mean, this debate's going to matter a ton. You've already talked about this. It's massive. And whether or not if they can smoke her out meaningfully to actually speak and address things, it's not that this will be a policy election. It will not be. It will be an opportunity to properly define her as the extremist and flip-flopper and empty pantsuit wearer that she is. If that happens, Donald Trump stays disciplined, you have a chance at a strong victory for Donald Trump. But there's a lot of things that happen in between there. And I also think there's October surprises to be had, September surprises to be had.
Yeah.
Something's going to change that's going to matter a lot.
Yes. All right. I kept him long. It was a great conversation. I always love hanging out. Go pick up. It's already a bestseller. And I can't tell how many people have said it to me, just like anecdotally in my life, that they have already bought and read War on Warriors. But go get War on Warriors. It's my co-host of Off the Grid, Off the Rails,
Thank you, brother.
and Fox and Friends, Pete Hesek. Thank you, Pete. Coming up, let's dig into the numbers in Venezuela. Let's find out how much is the crime rate down and how much is the population down in Venezuela as crime goes up in, for example, Aurora, Colorado. That's coming up on the Will Cain Show. The Tunnel to Towers, countless veterans' villages stand as a beacon of hope for those who sacrificed everything. These facilities, they're committed to helping veterans achieve stability and independence by providing housing and services based upon individual needs. Within the village, residents will find support and community among those who truly understand the meaning of service. And with several veterans' villages either completed or in development nationwide, the foundation and its supporters believe in the power of unity and that no veteran should be left behind. Through its homeless veteran program, Veterans Villages, National Case Management Network, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has provided housing and supportive services to over 8,000 veterans since the program's inception. So you can join Tunnel to Towers in their goal to eradicate veteran homelessness and support those who've given everything to the country by donating $11 a month to T2T.org. 95 cents of every dollar donated goes directly to helping America's heroes. That's T2T.org. I know Pete Hegseth and Off the Rails, sponsored by Tunnel to Towers, appreciate you donating that $11 a month to T2T.org. Donate now. Let's dig into Venezuela and its connection to Colorado next on The Will Cain Show.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Did you hear the news? Now you can. With instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa. Breaking stories and top headlines, the economy, and so much more. Brought to you by Fox News, America's #1 cable news network. Plus, setup couldn't be easier because everything's ready to go in the app. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
it's the latest when you need it, on demand, from Fox News and Amazon Alexa. From the Fox News Podcast Network.
I'm Emily Campagno, and this is the Fox True Crime Podcast.
And I had nothing to do with her disappearance, but people still accuse me of it.
I sit down with the people who lived the nightmares.
I was in shock. I was just devastated.
The investigators who tirelessly worked on the case.
I feel for their families, and I really hope that they can catch this guy.
Bringing you closer to the story than you ever thought possible.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm 24 years old, and I'm voting for Donald Trump, and all my friends that are my age are. We are all from New York City. So says G.I.J. on YouTube. Well, G.I., get all your friends. Tell them to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube to The Will Cain Show. Come join the militia. And join us every day at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, streaming live at foxnews.com, the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Terrestrial radio, coast to coast. Aurora, Colorado. Apartment blocks, multiple apartment blocks, taken over by Venezuelan gangs, specifically a gang that goes by the name Tren de Aragua. These gangs have taken over apartment blocks, pushed out property management, carrying AR-15s, and collecting rent. It's the type of scene you never would expect to have happened in the United States of America, but it is. Listen to the mayor of Aurora, Colorado on Fox News.
So there are several buildings actually under the same ownership, out-of-state ownership, that have fallen to these Venezuelan gangs. I'm trying to walk it back and do the investigation as to how there's a concentration of Venezuelans in these three buildings. Somebody put them there, and somebody funded it. Whether it's federal government or not, we're trying to find out who these gangs apparently are attracted to where there's a concentration of Venezuelan migrants. And so they've in fact have kind of pushed out the property management through intimidation and then collected the rents.
This is just stunning visuals if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. Stunning facts told you there by the mayor of Aurora, Colorado. And from what I've heard, it's actually worse than that. These gangs all over the city, not in this, just in this apartment block, involved in every level of crime. Now, Donald Trump, as we had mentioned earlier in our conversation with Pete Hegseth, Off the Rails, sponsored by Tunnel to Towers, has been going on podcasts like Theo Vaughn, Lex Friedman. On the Lex Friedman podcast, he said something that you've probably heard him say in the past if you listened intently. He said, well, crime is down in Venezuela. Like, Venezuelan streets are safe. And he even said on Lex Friedman's show, I mean, I would do that. If I was in charge of Venezuela, I'd ship out all the criminals. And it got me thinking, I want to dig in to that statement. Like, what are the numbers? And this is what I found. So first of all, the population of Venezuela, according to various groups on migrant crisis and refugee crises, has dropped by 6 million people. So it's in the range of dropping from about 31 million to 25 million people in the country. That's a stunning number. That's a stunning percentage. 6 million people have fled a country of about 30 million. I don't know. We don't talk enough about the quote unquote refugee or migrant crisis. Now, why are they leaving? Well, we know that Nicolas Maduro is basically consolidating power. He is, forcing himself to stay in office after winning only 30% of the vote, reportedly. It's socialism lived to its fullest flower. Store shelves empty, inflation out of control. Venezuela at one time, the fourth largest economy in the world, bigger than Canada, fallen to something like 135th, smaller than Uzbekistan. So people flee. But not everybody, just seeking a better life. As Donald Trump suggests, many of those gone are criminals. Let go from prison, shipped out of Venezuela. Now, what evidence do we have that that is the case? Well, how about this? Venezuelan crime over the last couple of years is down 25%. Another stunning stat, 25% drop in crime. This is something that Nicolas Maduro is bragging about. Now you say, well, okay, why? Well, there's a lot of reasons that could be the case. One, the government monopolization of violence. I mean, you have a socialist government with really an authoritarian who denies election results and control of the military. You can do anything you want to stop crime. I evidence to you El Salvador, which has done a great job of reducing crime, but one of the ways they've done that is lock up everybody, for example, with an MS-13 tattoo. And El Salvador's gotten way more safe. You set aside due process, you have mass arrests, you can reduce crime. Number two, the reason it could be down is propaganda. It's not down. Do you trust everything coming out of Venezuela? Stats from Nicolas Maduro. He's going to want to paint a utopia under his leadership. But number three, quite clearly, if 6 million people are leaving, how many of those are criminals at the same time we have apartment blocks being taken over in Aurora, Colorado? Like, common sense plays a role here. And there are also reports of this. Tren de Aragua leaving Venezuela and coming to places, not just America, all across South and Central America. But you're having 6 million people leave, crime dropping 25%, and all of a sudden a brand new problem in Aurora, Colorado. And not just Aurora, Colorado. Take a look at the cover of the New York Post. 3 out of 4 arrests in Midtown Manhattan, Times Square, connected to migrants. Venezuelan migrants in many of these cases. So the cost of what's happening at our southern border comes in the form of our security. You can draw a direct line here from Caracas to Aurora, Colorado on the effects of our border policies over the last couple of years. Of course, you can draw a direct line as well to Georgia, to Maryland, to Americans killed by illegal immigrants, raped and killed by illegal immigrants. You can draw a direct line. You know what else you can draw a direct line to? Sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Here I pulled this. This is from the Center for Immigration Studies. This is a map. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can take a look at this. If you're listening on radio or podcast, what I have on the screen is a map produced by the Center for Immigration Studies. It shows sanctuary states, counties, cities across the country. Now, here's what that map looks like. First of all, there's a green dot for every sanctuary state. Those states are basically, not in totality, but basically California, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Colorado, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and then all across the Northeast. New York, New Jersey. If you just colored in that map, you're talking about west to east across the northern half of America. If you drill it down into counties, that's even more fascinating. Counties, and let's go ahead and include cities as well. Now you have a huge concentration of sanctuary cities and counties around Washington, D.C., Maryland, where, there's a famous migrant murder and rape in that area. And then again, all throughout the North, throughout the Rust Belt, Midwest, shockingly, a lot of counties in Nebraska and Colorado being a sanctuary state, right there with sanctuary counties as well, and New Mexico. This is where, it's interesting, this is where you're getting this news of the rise in crime. I talked about with the guys here on the Will Cain Show in New York, the Willisha. Just anecdotally, and this is separating ourselves from Venezuela and it's separating ourselves from crime, but just the changing nature of America because of illegal immigration. When I graduated high school in Texas 30 years ago, the only Latino population in my high school was El Salvadorian refugees from the El Salvadorian Civil War. Today, that very same high school, I think, is somewhere between 20 and 30% Latino. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen over such a short amount of time? The guys in New York, two-a-days and Young Steps and James were surprised to learn that fact because in your mind, Texas is very Hispanic, very Latino. And it is in certain areas, but not all. It wasn't in all areas. And here's why I bring that up. You can see the same thing now happening in other parts of the country. I visit New York. I lived in New York for 15 years. You guys both live in New York. Mm-hmm. You've seen a change, have you not? On the subway, in Midtown, in Times Square.
Yeah, walking by the Roosevelt Hotel, there's a lot, and it's been a problem, and you see it. And even in the past, I've been at Fox 3 years now, and I've seen a huge difference just in the 3 years I've been here and coming into New York City for work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James brought it up on the subway. Here's a shocking image, okay, that I've heard on numerous occasions, not just from you, James. I've heard it from buddies up there. Tell me what it is that you now see as a pretty constant presence on the New York City subway.
Like kids age 4 to 5 trying to sell you candy, and like the middle of the day too. Like they're not in school, they're not in preschool, they're selling candy bars,
selling fruit,
mm-hmm.
selling candy, and on many occasions, just plain begging. Just
Sad.
Begging. Now, just take that in for one moment, because that is not an image that you're used to seeing in America. I want you to think about that for a minute, because all of us have seen the image. And so you may be a little bit desensitized to it. But why have you seen that image? Kids begging, school-age kids who should be in school, or maybe and sometimes even too young for school. Well, you've seen it in Latin America, if you've been on vacation there, or maybe in Asia. You've seen this type of thing. You do not see this in America. You do not see kids begging on public transit. But you do now in New York. This is the changing face of America. And it is not through any coordinated policy. It's not, meaning, it's not as though we said, all throughout our history, we've had immigration quotas, right? We're going to take X amount of people from this country, X amount of people from this country, all throughout our history. Clearly, we do not. It's just drastic change, relatively short period of time. Dating back to Texas, I gave you 30 years to the 1990s. In New York, over the last 5 years, you're talking about in a short period of time, a drastic change, which affects you culturally. It affects your public services, affects your healthcare system. It affects you in every way. And the point we're talking about now, when it comes to Venezuela and Tren de Aragua, is the way it affects you when it comes to crime. Direct line. You see the numbers in Venezuela, you hear the story in Aurora, Colorado. This cannot continue. in America. All right, let's get to some of your comments. Plus, is it a bigger mortgage of your future to trade away multiple first-round draft picks for the quarterback, quote-unquote, of your future, or pay your quarterback $60 million? Asking for a friend, the Cowboys. Next on The Will Cain Show.
I'm Dana Perino, and this is Perino on Politics.
Dana Perino, co-host of The Five and co-anchor of America's Newsroom, returns to Fox News Audio with a brand new podcast, Perino on Politics. Listeners of Everything Will Be Okay will be thrilled by the return of a familiar voice, but with a fresh spin as Dana guides audiences through the 2024 election cycle. Make sure you subscribe to this series wherever you download podcasts and leave a rating and review.
Start Saturday strong with America's #1 game. Texas takes on Michigan. Watch out! The best pregame, the best announcers, the biggest games. Big noon Saturday at noon Eastern on Fox.
We're bringing the thunder to football. Fox Weather is storming the field with the risk of weather impact on the hottest NFL games this season. Listen to Storming the Field every Friday on FoxNewsPodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Janice Dean, Fox News senior meteorologist, and my podcast, The Janice Dean Podcast. Every week, I'll be focusing in on a person, a place, or a thing that deserves your attention because it makes the world a better place. Be sure to subscribe to The Janice Dean Podcast at FoxNewsPodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to spread the sunshine.
America's listening to Fox News.
My son goes to bed at 9:30 every day on his own and up at 6 and plays sports, but he wants that 8 hours, says $12.99 Pete on YouTube. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at Fox News YouTube, Fox News Facebook, terrestrial radio, on demand, Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. Autumn Pace says on YouTube, instead of letting the system raise your children, do it yourselves. Homeschool your children. Have parents in the home. I mean, it is true that it's hard to break the cycle because you send your kids away for, like, sending them away is like a perk for a lot of parents during the day. But what we're talking about today is whether or not it's the most efficient use of time for your kids. Anna Bree Trick on YouTube says, I have a computer and a landline phone only, and I'm quite happy. Okay, Anna. May I introduce you to my friend Pete? Juliet Thompson Dalrymper over on Facebook says, anyone who wants Harris wants to destroy our country. Meanwhile, Colin Neal says, Trump has no path to victory, though. I don't think that's true, Colin. I think we just went through, it's neck and neck in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and that's going to define our election. All right, let's go. I need to do a little housekeeping, a little bookkeeping. So, Willisha, I went on Will versus the Experts this weekend. 2-3 in my college football picks. I went up against it's Trey Wallace, right?
Yep.
From Outkick. How did he do?
How did he do, James?
No one has.
I
That
know. Will
went
went 2-3.
Experts.
James.
Well, it's not just Will. It's Will versus the expert. So you have to.
Well,
know
we were
the
mostly
expert's
focused on
record
you.
as well.
You know, because we know you're just going to win anyways. So.
Do you remember how many of them you went different?
What's that mean?
I'm trying to vamp here.
Because I don't even know if you can vamp long enough to pull it up. I don't know. Are you guys keeping track? Are you writing down their picks?
We are, yeah. I have the whole thing. I'm just trying to find it now. Sorry, you know, Patrick,
I think
tinfoil Pat just being out is throwing a wrench into things.
Yeah. Both of you guys wearing pink in one day.
Looks good. It looks. How
it's
great
a whole
does it
new
look?
show.
Look at this. Iron
in September. You'd think it was May or June. I think Outkick's expert went 2-3 as well. I think that we tied. I think that we were both 2-3. While you vamp,
yeah. So
here's
I have
my question for you. Go ahead.
Okay, so Trey picked Clemson. You picked Georgia.
Nice.
Yep. Trey had LSU. You had LSU. Trey had Notre Dame. You had A&M.
That's a W for.
Yep.
That's a W for Trey.
And then Trey had Florida. You had Miami.
Nice.
And then Trey had West Virginia also.
Okay.
So Trey went 1-4.
Mm-hmm.
I went 2-3. Trey went 1-4. Big win for me versus the experts in week 1.
Huge.
Nice. This weekend in Will versus the experts, we're going to have to add in professional football. Now we have the NFL kicking off. And here's the hypothetical I have for everyone. So there's obviously a lot of divided opinion on Dak Prescott. The story going into the season, Dak Prescott is in the final year of his contract. And if history is correct, if they don't get a deal done basically this week, and they won't with Dak Prescott, I would be shocked if they got a deal done, then it's highly likely he makes it to free agency. The Joneses, the Cowboys, don't do business during the season. Now, that could always change. They could choose to wrap up Dak Prescott whenever they like. But the idea, the story is they want to see how he does, see how he plays. So that would mean trying to do a deal somewhere towards the end of the NFL season before free agency starts in March. Now, if you're Dak at that point, why? At that point, I'm wrapping it. I'm healthy. I made it through the season. I'm going to free agency. And by most accounts, if Dak Prescott makes it to free agency, he will make $60 million a year. He will be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And there will be tons of teams lined up to sign Dak Prescott. Now, the public thinks he's trash. That's what everybody says to me. Maybe they just say it to me. But the NFL knows that he's not. He's a top 10 quarterback who hasn't won in the playoffs. That's the bottom line. A top 10 quarterback who hasn't won in the playoffs. There's no metric by which you come away from this that he's not a top 10 quarterback. None.
Jordan Love's
only
better.
by projection, like that. Like you saying Jordan Love. That's projection. I mean, I've got 8 years of evidence. If Jordan Love has Dak Prescott's career, you will be very excited if he is that level of quarterback. Now, I'm not telling you about the team results because it is a team game as well. So here's my question for you, though. $60 million really ties up your salary cap. And it's a legit question for Prescott with a guy you're not sure can win the Super Bowl for you. Legit question. So what's a bigger mortgage of your future? Spending $60 million and hamstringing your salary cap for Dak Prescott, or letting him go? And if you let him go, you are saying, I'm going to go find my quarterback of the future somewhere else. Now, that probably means in the draft. But the problem is Dak is good enough, the Cowboys will not be selecting inside the top 10. They will probably be selecting in the 20s. I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jones is enthralled with Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. I wouldn't be surprised. Local guy, Texas guy.
Ooh.
I think Quinn, and I'm a homer, I think he's got a little bit of Mahomes in him. I think he's got a little bit of, like, incredible arm talent. He needs consistency. He needs some fundamentals worked in there, but he's got incredible arm talent. Did you see that no-look pass, you guys, for a touchdown this weekend? It was awesome. It was very
Let's
Aaron
relax
Rodgers.
on the Mahomes comparison, all right?
I heard it from a lot of people this weekend.
Everyone's the next Mahomes. Everyone's the next Mahomes now. They say about it.
Okay, well, I'll do Aaron
guys.
Rodgers.
Okay, there you go.
Does that have a different a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, sure.
Another Hall of Famer.
Sure.
If that makes you happy.
Sure.
But the thing is, for you to draft Quinn Ewers, you would have to do one of these deals where you trade away like 3 years worth of first-round draft picks to get up high enough to make that happen. And even then, like the teams that do this have usually 2 first-round draft picks, which the Cowboys do not have. So you are going to mortgage years of draft to go get a guy like Quinn Ewers, or you're going to spend $60 million on Dak. Either way, you're mortgaging your future for the quarterback. Otherwise, you're Washington. You know, the only team that's ever done what the Cowboys are talking about doing is Washington, walking away from Kirk Cousins. And they spent a decade in the wilderness. We'll see if Jaden Daniels gets them out of the forest. But a decade of this. So which is the bigger mortgage of your future? I would contend it's trading away all those draft picks for a rookie quarterback. I think the safe play is $60 million on Dak Prescott.
I don't know. I would love to see Dak somewhere else, though, to see where he lands in my head as a quarterback. I think it'd be very, very interesting, especially some of the teams we mentioned earlier on the call.
I don't know. I'd rather not see him on the Jets or the Giants.
I forget, James, are you a Giants fan?
Is this a trap?
Oh, you're Patriots.
Patriots.
Oh, yeah, you're
He's
Patriots.
like, is that a trick question?
For a minute there, it actually wasn't. For a minute, I thought you were a normal,
sense.
sports fan who's from New York and roots for New York teams. I forgot for a minute that you pick the best team in every sport to root for the past decade. I forgot you did that.
Wrong.
Celtics, Yankees, Pats. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I think I would love to see. I mean, I wouldn't love to see it. I think Dak on the Giants would. Well, I'll tell you this. I think it would flip that division. It would. All of a sudden, the Giants are good and the Cowboys are bad.
So I found an article.
Go ahead, 2 days.
Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, I used to work with, is great. He put together 7 teams that would be good for Dak.
Terrible.
Don't like him.
He's terrible.
Oh, boy. Well, he's number one. Giants
doesn't like me.
Giants at number 1. Jets number 2. Raiders 3. Steelers 4, which is interesting. 5 Saints, 6 Seahawks, 7 Rams. So a lot of teams you said earlier. Could be a landing spot for Dak if they don't sign.
Why would the Jets be in there? So assuming you only have 1 year of Aaron Rodgers?
He's only got 1 year left under contract, and he's 41
He says, because Aaron Rodgers
40?
said earlier this year, if the Jets fail this year, everyone's gone. So
maybe Aaron Rodgers, Dallas Cowboy.
Oh, my God.
They almost did. The Ian O'Connor book, when they talk about Aaron Rodgers' draft night, when the Cowboys traded up right in front of the Packers that night, there was a lot of talk that could have been the way that they went. Could you imagine if Aaron Rodgers had been a 20-year Cowboy? Because that was, a year or 2 before they got Romo?
2 days. Florio, huge lib. Hates, I don't know why. I just remember when I was at ESPN, I don't remember what it was or what he said, but it was not. How did you not?
We just talked about football. That's about it. He used to when I was on the Dan Patrick Show, he used to guest host for Dan before he did any TV stuff. So that's how I know him.
Great guy. Okay, you should book him. Let's get him on.
All
See
right.
how that goes.
I'll call him up.
He's
Mike,
blocked me on
on.
social media.
I'll text him.
He's going to show up on the Will Cain Show. Sign Dak Prescott. I'll get excited about Quinn Ewers, but I don't think you can get Quinn Ewers. I think you have to mortgage your future to get Quinn Ewers. So you sign Dak Prescott. You kick off the NFL season, and here we go. But by the way, 80% of my attention is going to be at the big house this weekend. Texas, Michigan. We'll break that down later this week. Plus, we're going to be joined by, speaking of the Dan Patrick Show, Andrew Perloff. A little bit later this week on the Cain on Sports edition of the Will Cain Show. That's going to do it for me today. I will see you again, same time, same place, tomorrow.